Gehry. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to President Gehry, also to Provost Snyder for extending this invitation for me, because I don't get to come this far from Miami very often, and also to do something that I don't normally do, which is to present an overview about Spain. And before I do the presentation, I want to know what kind of audience I have. How many of you have you been to Spain? How many of you? Good. So you know what I'm going to be talking about. Very good. So what I'm going to do, the presentation is going to have 3 parts. The last part is going to be the flamenco show. So that's serious. Okay, so get ready for it. I don't know if some of you may have experience in doing so. But anyway, I'm going to I'm going to give an introduction of what we do as an office, as an institution. Then I'm going to do an introduction on cultural icons and certain aspects of current affairs about my country. And I don't know how long I have. If we have enough time, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background about flamenco, and I'm going to play some music, okay? Because flamenco is the best example, is the testament of what I call the Spanish melting pot, okay? So I'm going to give you an example of the different influences that different people left in Spain throughout history. So I'm not an expert in Spain. I mean, I'm just a Spanish, okay? But part of my job deals, thank you. Part of my job deals with the promotion of Spain, and I tell you why. I work for the Education Office of the Embassy of Spain, which is up in Washington, D.C., but I'm located in the Consulate of Spain in Miami. And I'm actually accompanied by my boss, the Education Attaché, Javier Garcia Velasco. So basically what we do, not only in Miami, but in the whole of the United States, is to promote Spain as a culture, and Spanish as a language within the school system. So we normally work with different school districts, and we carry out different bilateral agreements with them. For example, in Miami, we have plenty of schools that take place in the bilingual program. We don't really get to do these events open to the community, so for me it's very refreshing. But as I say, it's part of my job. I'm not really an expert in Spain, but I'm from Spain, so I know a little bit about it. So basically, I'm going to show you a map of the United States and the different offices where we are present. We are present in 26 states of the Union. We're actually present in 40 countries in the world. What we do in the United States, we do in different countries. We promote Spanish as a second language and Spanish culture within the school system in 40 countries in the world. And this is what I'm going to tell you about Spain. At the end of the presentation, you can ask me questions, okay? But I'm going to give you a general overview of Spain. Have you seen this logo before? It's a Spanish official logo for the promotion of our country, coined by the Ministry of Tourist Affairs. And whenever you see that, you just relate it to Spain. This is our map. You know the name of the peninsula we are located in? Iberian, exactly. And it's located in the southwestern region of Europe. We are a very large country in European standards, very small for you. I would say roughly Portugal, because we have to share the peninsula with our next door neighbors, Portugal. Portugal and Spain, more or less, they, I would say I would equate it to the state of Texas. So for you, I'm sure it's not a very big country. For European standards, it is. Our neighbors in the south, Morocco, do you know the distance that separates us from them? Not even 10 miles.
Oh my gosh.
Half an hour by ferry. So that's interesting. Okay, this is Spain, but Spain is more than one country. We are 17 autonomous regions. Do you know what autonomous regions are? Something very similar to states. Something very similar to having a federal government and 17 statal governments, if you know what I mean. I come from the south, from Andalusia. Do you know who they are? King Juan Carlos, been in power since 1976, and his heir, do you know his name? Is Prince Felipe, who will be the next king. Now, he's a very modern king. He actually dared to marry someone who was not a member of the royal family. And that's gonna be our next queen, Letizia, okay? That's our queen, Queen Sofia. She actually belongs to the Greek royal family. They are exiled in the United Kingdom, okay? So it's a new theme. We're gonna have a queen that was not part of the royal families in Europe. Can you imagine what a big thing that is? That's our president. His name is Mariano Rajoy, and he's the head of the Conservative Party. He's been in power since November 2011. And prior to that, we had 2 terms of socialist governments. He's not a very popular president right now because he's doing a lot of budget cuts. I don't know if you know, Spain has been in the news, and not for good reasons. We have a high unemployment rate, and we were almost bailed by the European Union. So he's actually had to make a lot of cuts, and people are not really happy with his way of dealing with things. I mean, he's actually half in his term, so we'll see what happens in the next election. Okay, this is a map of the 28 European countries in the European Union. We also have the economic area. One of them, for example, is Norway, who is not part of the Union. And we also have the candidate countries, for example, Greece, that want to become a member state, but we'll see what happens in the negotiations they have, or Iceland, for example. We joined in 1986, okay? And when we joined, one of the novelties for us was that in the future, we were gonna have to share one currency, the euro. Not all the countries in the European Union actually use the euros. It's only 18 of them. Do you know our former currency? If you've been to Spain before? Peseta. Okay? Peseta. Okay, I wanted to show you, and this is part of our job in the promotion of Spanish as a second language. I wanted to show you the map of the world, and also the map of countries where Spanish is spoken as a first language, and they actually in red. Obviously, we have Spain, we have most of Latin America except for Brazil and Guyanas, but there are a lot of countries in which Spanish is spoken because of historical reasons. For example, Guinea in Africa used to be a colony, so Spanish is spoken there, and we actually have an office there. Or, for example, I would say the Philippines, where they speak Spanish and their dialects are based on Spanish, like Chabacano, for example, which is a pidgin between English and Spanish. And obviously, we have other countries that are not actually colored in red, where Spanish is spoken, widely spoken. For example, in Brazil, where they use Spanish even in certain areas in the school system as a first language. And in the United States, where you have, you know how many million of Spanish speakers, according to the last census? 37 million. 37 million people use Spanish as a mother tongue. So I would say Spanish is the language to learn in the United States. I'm going to go very quickly through the cultural icons. I would say the most important cultural features that we have in Spain that really defined the Spanish psyche, so to say. And the first one refers to Don Quixote, okay? Very good. Written by our most famous writer, Miguel de Cervantes, okay? And that was written in 1603, and it really marked the beginning of the modern Spanish novel, okay? The modern European novel, I would say. He was a prolific writer that wrote many, many books, and he really left an imprint in Spanish literature. A lot of writers later on tend to copy them, okay? He is, for us, what's for you in English, your Shakespeare. Miguel de Cervantes is for Spanish literature what Shakespeare is for English literature. Do you know that painting? Las Meninas. Who said Las Meninas? Las Meninas de Velázquez, that was painted in 1736, and that's the most famous painting in El Prado Museum. You know El Prado Museum? The Prado Museum, I would say, is the museum that shows the best collection of European art between the 12th and 19th centuries in Europe. I would say in importance it's comparable to the Louvre or to l'Ermitage in St. Petersburg for different specialties in paintings. And that's the most visited, the most admired painting there. El Prado is actually in Madrid, which is not my hometown because I'm a southerner, but it's my boss's hometown. And El Prado is actually in what we call the Museum Triangle in Madrid. You have three very important museums. One of them is El Prado, the other one is the Thyssen Museum and Queen Sofia Museum. And they are actually within, I would say, 20 minutes walk, something like that, or less than that, 15 minutes walk. So I highly recommend you to go and visit the three of them in Madrid. I mean, don't only go to El Prado, go to the other two as well. Do you know this painting? Picasso, okay, Picasso is also a southerner, like myself. He's from a place called Malaga in the south of Spain. Picasso painted this particular work of art in 1937. And I'm going to go very quickly over something very important, an important event in the history of Spain. We have a dictatorship from 1939 until 1975, when the king became the king of Spain. But prior to that, from 1936 to 1939, we had a civil war between two different factions. One of them were the nationalists, that were the people who wanted to get away and to break the republic, and the Republicans that wanted to have a republic, not a monarchy or not a military regime in Spain. Picasso painted this in order to show the suffering on human beings inflicted by war. And that painting was commissioned by the Republican side, that was the one that lost the Civil War in 1937. That painting, and that was according to the painter's wishes, didn't return to Spain until Spain went back to a democracy in it was after 1975, but that painting went back to Spain in 1981, I mean, when he was already dead, but they respected his wishes. And for a very long time, you had the privilege to have that painting in New York, in the Museum of Modern Art. So a lot of Spaniards, if they wanted to see the painting, they had to come to the United States. Now you can see it in the Queen Sofia Museum in Madrid. Do you know what that is? That's a Roman aqueduct, okay? It's a water system. It's in a place called Segovia, which is in the center of Spain. And It's a wonderful piece of Roman engineers. Don't forget that we had, I wouldn't call it a Roman invasion, I would call it a Roman settlement for almost 700 years in Spain. So after they died out as an empire, if you want to call it like that, they left a common language that became Spanish, I mean a common language that was based in Latin. They left a lot of paved roads in the country, and they left a wonderful network of aqueducts. This is the most important one. It's outside a place called Segovia. And as I say, it was used as an aqueduct to transport water to the city up to the 19th century. So it's very impressive that 18 centuries after it was built, it was still used as that. Granada? Have you been there? How many of you have been? Okay, I wanted to show this pic because President Clinton fell in love with this view of Granada, of the Alhambra, okay? The Alhambra is a Moorish palace that's, for me, is my favorite piece of Arabic architecture in Spain. And it was actually the last place, the last Arabic kingdom, so to say, in Spain. The last Arabs in Spain left from Granada in 1492. Don't forget, the Arabs were in our country for 8 centuries, even longer than the Romans, okay? So they were there from the late 5th century until 1492. And they left a very, very big imprint. I mean, they left wonderful pieces of Arabic architecture. They left imprints in the food, in the way we behave, especially in my region, because in my region, it was the place where they stayed the longest, the south of Spain. And I was explaining to a Spanish class earlier on, even the way we speak in Spanish, me as a Southerner, we use certain Arabic sounds. It's very interesting. Even in the language, they left an imprint. Very interesting, very strong Arabic influence we have in the South. Even if you go to places like Córdoba, have you been to Córdoba? They have a very big mosque that they use as a cathedral, okay? And if you go, for example, to Seville, we have the Giralda Tower, which is basically an identical tower to the ones you see in North Africa, in the Moorish lands, in Morocco or Tunisia. Okay, this is an icon in Spanish culture.
Bullfighting.
And it's a very, yes, I know, you said, oh my God. It's a very difficult subject to talk about, especially because my boss is pro-bullfighting and I'm against it. No, not only that, I mean, bullfighting is a very controversial subject. I mean, bullfighting is what we call la fiesta española, is the national fest, la fiesta nacional. But I must admit, I've never been to a bullfight in my life, okay? I'm not in agreement with that. I don't like it. I'm an animal lover, and the way I see it is just, as we say, it's torture, it's not art, it's not culture. My boss could tell you a different story, I mean, because he really knows about bullfighting, and it's true, I must admit, that it's been part of the culture. But a lot of things throughout history have been part of the culture, and they are not acceptable anymore, you know. So it's, as I say, it's a very controversial subject. I would say, and this is a generalization, and I don't know if you're going to agree, but most young Spaniards, they don't go to bullfighting. I mean, like bullfighting, I mean, if you go to a bullfight, it's old people that go there. I mean, young people, but I mean, I'm not calling you old. Oops. Well, and let's rewind. I mean, I would say that the average age of the people who go to bullfight is well, you know what I mean. So what I mean is that it's not really a pastime of young people. I mean, yes?
Where did the bullfighting come from?
Yeah, and I was going to say that. That's a very interesting question. I mean, I recognize the historical and traditional value. I mean, it comes from Mycenas, the Greek islands, from Mykonos, you know, it has a classic origin, but as I say, a lot of things that happen in the world, they had classic origins, so they happened centuries ago, and from the modern perspective, they're not acceptable anymore. So, as I say, it's so controversial that it's actually affecting bullfighting as a business, because, I mean, there are a lot of money involved in bullfighting. I mean, bullfighters, they make a lot of money. I mean, the top figures in bullfighting. Remember I told you that we have 17 autonomous communities? One of them, which is also in the news for difficult reasons, I mean, Catalonia, they want to become independent from Spain. But my point about Catalonia is that their parliament, they decided not to make bullfighting legal anymore. So it's illegal from 2012, I think it was passed that law. It's illegal to have a bullfight in Catalonia, but it's legal to have it in my region, in the south. But regardless of what I think, I mean, and I don't like it, and I've taken part in demonstrations against it, I must admit that in terms of the cultural impact of the Spanish psyche, it's there. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, my father used to watch bullfighting on television. I mean, nobody does that anymore, Javier, except for you. But as I say, I mean, it has a cultural, a traditional value, but it's dying out. That's for sure. Tapas is the way we normally eat. That's not to say that we don't have restaurants. That wouldn't be the case. We do have restaurants, and we do have a lot of very well famous chefs that have wonderful restaurants, and they've become well known all over the world. But the way Spaniards eat out, I wouldn't say that most of us sit down and have a full meal at the table. We do the Spanish version of what you would call in the Anglo culture bar hopping, but with food. That's the difference. That's the difference. I mean, call it to go on a tapas feel would be to go to different bars and to have some wine, to have some beer, but you always accompany it with a little bit of food. I mean, it's like a mini version of a full meal, okay? So that you can digest your wine better and you keep on drinking more wine without really being affected by that, you know?
Appetizer.
Yeah, it would be like an appetizer if you want to call it like that. But it's possible to visit maybe 6-7 bars during a night, and you would have a different tapa in every single bar and a different glass of wine or whatever you're drinking. In certain areas in Spain, for example in Granada, if you order a drink, they give you a tapa, they choose it for you. So it's very cheap. I mean, you pay maybe $2 for a beer and a tapa, okay? Which it's a great value. That doesn't happen all over the country, but it happens in Granada and the West. This is another cultural icon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Soccer, la furia, la roja. Okay, la roja, the translation would be the red ones. Okay, they are the Spanish national soccer team. And I'm afraid that's not a favorite subject of mine either. I hate soccer. And he likes soccer. So there are 2 subjects we don't talk about. Well, 3 actually. I'll tell you the third one later on. Okay? So soccer is for you. I don't know, I was talking to an American friend the other day, and I was like trying to equate soccer to your national sport. And I try to equate it with basketball because where we live in Miami, the fever with the Miami Heat is unbelievable. But I know it's just in part of the United States. For example, when I was in Los Angeles, it was more geared towards baseball, and in Boston, for example, with the baseball team that they have there. I would say it really depends on the part of the United States. For us, it's soccer. And if you're a man, you like soccer. And if you're a woman, a high percentage of women, they like soccer as well. Those are images of the Spanish national team when we won the World Cup back in 2010 in South Africa. And it was a wonderful event. Not only because they say they played very well, I didn't watch it by the way, but that created such a boost in the Spanish culture, because don't forget, it was the beginning of the recession for us. And we needed an outside factor that elevated us as a country, and that contributed to that. Like, for example, those images are people welcoming the national soccer team in Madrid. So for a few days, for a few weeks, the Spaniards forgot the recession. So, do you know what that is? That's the Sagrada Familia Basilica. It was started to be built in 1883, and it hasn't been finished yet, okay? But I wanted to show it because of the Gaudi, and also because the word you use, Gaudi, comes from Gaudí, because of the iconic towers, the exuberant, exotic towers, when you call someone Gaudi, that comes from him, And actually this monument is very important because it's the third most visited monument in Spain. First is el Prado Museum, and second, La Alhambra in Granada, the Moorish palace, and the third one would be La Sagrada Familia. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Do you know what that is? It's the Guggenheim Museum, okay? And I wanted to include a reference to it because it was built by your American-Canadian architect, Frank Gehry, okay? The one that has the Opera Hall in Los Angeles. He also had a little museum in La Rioja region, okay? Another iconic, you can see his style. The moment you see it, you know that it's done by Gehry. That's a wonderful museum as well, and that's actually in the Basque Country in the north, a very interesting autonomous region as well that was for centuries untouched, even by the Arabs, the Romans, because they were so far to the north that they didn't get those influences. So later on, politically, they claimed their independence from Spain for a very long time. Our most, I would say, international actors, they are Javier Bardem and Penélope Cruz. They are Oscar winners, and they're very, very well-known in Spain, well-known in the United States, and they're actually an icon. They are wife and husband, okay? So they met very young when they filmed their first film by Vigas Luna. But that was almost 20 years ago, or 25 years ago. And then they met later on, they fell in love, and now they've had their second child. 3 different icons. I wanted to show you our most typical cars, I would say. It's the best known Spanish brand for cars. That's Seat. Okay, Seat is actually part of the Volkswagen group. It's our Spanish version of Volkswagen. In fact, there's a Seat Ibiza, and it has the same engine as your Rabbit, the Golf Rabbit. So for a very long time, Spaniards had Seat, a lot of Seat cars. Now you can see cars from all over the world. Not a lot of American cars. I would say German cars are very popular. To a lesser extent, I would say French cars and Japanese or Korean. And those are our beaches, okay? Don't think that Miami Beach is the only place that gets crowded, okay? We have very crowded beaches. We have, I don't know if you've heard about places like Benidorm, Torremolinos. They are our version of Miami Beach. I mean, places where you can go on vacation, and a lot of people go there for the winter. I mean, we actually have a lot of snowbirds, but they don't come from the north of the United States, of Canada. I bet most of you are snowbirds, right? So we have the same phenomenon, but they come from Norway, from Sweden, from Finland, from Scandinavia. A lot of them come and they settle down in our warm regions, for example, in Costa del Sol, in Malaga, where you wouldn't see these crowds in the winter. They are actually crowds from our summer beaches. And I'm going to show you another icon regarding the way we eat, which is olive oil, okay? Olive oil is part of our diet, and this is a discussion that I have with a lot of my American friends, even my American boyfriend. When we cook, we have an argument every single time because he wants to use canola oil and other oils that you use. I mean, this is the oil we use. I mean, even to fry. We are actually the #1 producer of oil in the world, and if you see a lot of olive oil, if you look at the bottle, and some of them, there's a product of Italy, mistrust that, you know, because it's actually our oil, but bottled in Italy. So we have thousands of acres of olive trees in the south of Spain, because it's very hot. I was going to ask you something. Do you think, from the top of your head, do you think Spain is a religious country? Would you think about Spain being a religious country?
Yeah.
Well, that's the image we have. And according to this survey that they did last year, that's the way Spaniards identify themselves in terms of religion. Okay, so most of them, the blue-colored section of the circle, they are Catholics, okay? And then the gray ones, they are non-believers. Black ones, they are atheists. And then we have a yellow sector, other religions. That's in theory. In practice, I would say bullfighting rings and churches are empty, okay? Yes, those are two places that are empty because most people don't practice their religion. The Spanish religion, the Catholic Church, has played a very important role in the Spanish psyche, in the Spanish tradition. But I would say most young people don't spend their time in church or in the bullfighting. But in theory, they still consider themselves Catholic. Very quickly, our education system, we have free education in elementary, middle, and high school years, and university is virtually free. When I say universities, public universities, when I say virtually, the registration fees that we pay at public universities are, they are non-existent in comparison to what you pay. I would say, for example, the registration tuition fees for a year of undergraduate studies would be maybe $1,000, something like that. That would be tuition fee. And for master's degree, for example, I paid my second one out of my pocket, and I think I paid not even 2,500 euros. That would be like over $3,000 in tuition fees for a 2-year course. So basically we have free universal education, and as I say, we have certain fees, but they are nominal fees. The same with the health service. We have universal health care. And actually, it's one of the best ones in Europe.
For a very long time, a lot of people in the United Kingdom and a lot of people in Scandinavia, they used to come to Spain to have surgeries. You know, while they were spending the winter, they used our health system. It's a very, very, very good health system. What happened was, remember when I showed you the president of the new Spanish government was not popular because of the budget cuts and so on? His budget cuts are impacting what we call the welfare system, especially regarding education. Okay, a lot of people are beginning to get loans for scholarships that they used to get before on taxpayers' money. And they're doing a lot of budget cuts in the hospitals now. For example, the kind of help and aids that we used to get when getting drugs, we don't get them anymore. So I don't know what's going to happen. Certainly our education and health service will change with time. They say it's not sustainable the way we had it before, but I don't think it's going to be compromised 100% because, as I say, it's part of the Spanish and the European cycle in that respect. I wanted to talk about present and solved issues in Spain. Those are matters that worry Spaniards, and the first one would be unemployment. You said you were familiar with Spain being in the news, and I'm sure that you've heard the percentage of unemployment that we have. According to the last survey we did, and I think I'm handling figures from October 2013, it was 26.7. That's a very big problem. I mean, I'm talking about 1 out of 4 people in the working population are unemployed. But don't forget, those are general figures. If you just concentrate on different demographics, for example, young people that in theory are able to work, and it's even higher than that, it's more than 55%. Or in my region, if you go geographically in the south of Spain, around Cadiz, for example, Cadiz, that would be, I would say, close to 45%, something like that. Can you imagine? That means a lot of people haven't been working for maybe 2-3 years, which is beyond the unemployment benefit period. And you see, unfortunately, many families that are living off the pension of the grandparents, and 3 generations are living together. That's one of the most difficult problems to solve. The present government tried to actually incentivize the employment by actually loosening up a lot of our labor laws. I mean, our labor laws have traditionally been very strict, very difficult to fire people, for example. And they tried to go the other way to incentivize entrepreneur and to incentivize the creation of new employment. We don't know what the solution is, but we really need to find a solution for this very worrying situation.
Get rid of capitalism like we need to here.
Well, you're entitled to have your opinion, but I don't think they even looked at that solution. But it could be. Anyway, the second picture I wanted to show you is the other problem that we have with illegal immigrants. Don't forget, remember I told you the distance between south of Spain and north of Morocco? I told you, not even 10 miles. I mean, it's actually 14 kilometers, much less. What happens? They come every day. They come on rafts. I mean, don't forget, I mean, it's even closer than Cuba is here. And we have a problem. We have a problem because the country also is in a bad situation. I mean, the resources are very limited. We don't know how to help them. I have to tell you that between, I would say, 2000 and 2008, Spain was booming, economically speaking. I mean, we had a construction bubble that really hit us very, very heavily later on. And we received a lot of immigration waves, a lot of immigrants, especially from South America, a lot of Colombians, Ecuadorians, that actually did the jobs that the Spaniards didn't want to do, you know. Now, when the recession started in 2008, those jobs were coveted by the Spaniards, you know, so a lot of them went back to their countries. But I'm talking about legal immigration. They had a legal immigration status. I mean, these guys from Africa, they come illegally and they come from very, very difficult situations. So that's another problem that we have to solve. And this is the third subject I talked to my boss about, apart from soccer and bullfighting. We usually talk in the office in our very little spare time about the new role of Spanish women in our society. Because one of the current unsolved issues that we have in Spain is domestic violence. I'm not saying that every single Spanish man is bad and that they are violent, no. But what I'm saying is that in recent years, we've had an increase in the number of domestic violence cases. And I'm not trying to find a reason for that, but certainly the role of us Spanish women changed very quickly. Don't forget we had 40 years of dictatorship between 1939, 1975, 76, when the parliamentary monarchy started. During those years, for example, European women, they were hand by your feminist movements. I mean, the Spanish women didn't really live certain periods that other women in Europe and the United States were living. So what happened is after the dictatorship finished, I mean, the way we reacted is being a revolution, and we're very strong, very, very strong. And that's created a friction with men. I mean, that's my general analysis. So that's the third subject I talked to him about, and another unsolved issue. And the other unsolved issues that we have is alcohol consumption. Binging, alcohol binging. I always draw a line from the UK to Greece in the European map, okay? And I call it the Europe of beer and the Europe of wine, North and South. And that's just my term, okay? I think in the Europe of wine, alcohol is regarded in a different way. Why? Because we drink alcohol from very early ages, I mean, with the family. My first wine, I had it with my mom and dad. So the way we look at alcohol is different. In the Europe of beer, you had a very strong tradition by the Vikings and people that actually consumed a lot of alcohol outside meal times, outside the family scenarios, and also you have Puritan laws that banned alcohol and made it glamorous because you prohibited it and you want to do it more, you know? So that's in theory, that's what was happening until very recent years. Now we are in a global village, and I can tell you, Spanish youngsters, they do alcohol binging. I mean, they drink in a different way. The world is becoming global in that respect, and that's also a problem we have to fix. So that's my first part of the presentation. Do you have any questions?
Does the unemployment situation in Spain, is that leading to any out-migration by young people to other parts of the European Union, like Germany, where there are more jobs?
An exodus. It's very sad. Very sad. We have a lot of people going to Germany, a lot of engineers going to Germany. Very interesting, a lot of people are going to South American countries because they don't have the language barrier. For example, Chile is an emerging economy. A lot of Spaniards are going there. It's very sad. It's very sad because it's the most, I would say, the best prepared Spanish generation. I mean, you see people with 2 master's degree, a doctorate, that they cannot find jobs and they have to leave. It's very sad.
dominance of the northern countries in the EU, doesn't the southern countries could really offer more joy in life to the northern parts of the EU? And I'm sure the economic problems will be taken care of in Spain. But doesn't Spain offer a lot more to the EU in the future?
In terms of enjoyment.
Culture too. Culture to the rest of the EU.
You should come and work for the European Union. You found the solution. You are absolutely right.
Yes.
I mean, what we added to the Union is spice, you know? You have to understand something. I mean, the European Union was created as an answer to you guys, I mean, to be your competitors, if you want to call it like that. But it's very easy to unify a large number of people who do not share the same language, they do not share the same culture, they don't even drink the same way, for example. And they don't have the same work ethics. I mean, Germans, for example, any Germans here? Okay, this is not to be said outside this, but let me phrase this. What I wanted to say is that I'm not saying Germans are boring. I'm not saying that. No. But the way we look at life is completely different. I mean, the way we look at life is, and I'm making a generalization. I'm from Spain, and I think I'm very hardworking, but work is not the most important thing of our life. I mean, life is more than work, you know, because in the Anglo-Saxon world, in the north of Europe, in what I call the Europe of the beer, you know, work is it's very important. I mean, it is important because you need money to drink beer and to enjoy yourself. But it's very difficult to unify that. But what we offer in terms of enjoyment, of course, I mean, we are the destination, the holiday destination for Northern Europeans. And they love Spain, I mean, and they retire in Spain. I think the way I see it, and I'm not an economist, I'm a linguist, I mean, we really have to strike a balance between work and pleasure. And I don't think you Germans have the solution, because you work too much, but we party too much as well. You know, that's the difference. I think it's just a matter of balance, but it's true. What we add to the European Union makes it, I think it has no price.
First about it.
That's a touristy question. How easy or difficult is it to get around in the country, transportation-wise?
We have excellent freeways. It's a very modern country. I mean, don't forget that Spain, we are a Latino country in the sense that, I mean, we share a lot with Latin America, but in terms of infrastructure, in terms of history, and in terms of mentality, I mean, we are Europeans, so if you travel, for example, by road from Portugal or France into Spain, you're not going to know the difference. And it's a safe country as well. Obviously, I mean, there are bad neighborhoods in every single big city. But in terms of going around, the train system is wonderful. I mean, we can have, actually Madrid is the hub for what we call the high-speed train, AVE. And you can get from Madrid to basically any of the big cities in less than 3 hours. I mean, like Madrid Seville is like less than 2 hours and a half. If I were you, if I were to go to Spain, I wouldn't drive. I would use the train. I mean, the public transportation system is unparalleled. It's really good.
At the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned there's a region in Spain right now that's looking to break away from Spain. What is the name of that region?
Catalonia.
What's the reason for doing that? What's the size of the region compared to the others?
Well, the size of the region, they're not very big, actually. I would say in terms of sizing, I mean, do you remember the subway? Okay, I'm going to show you. This is Catalonia. That's Catalonia, and this is Andalusia, where I come from. In terms of population, we're 8.5 million. I mean, geographically they are half, but in terms of population, more or less, because they are more populated than we are.
Around 6.5.
6.5, 6.5. They are very industrial, very rich, and they have what we call a cultural identity, okay? I don't want to talk about that because it's a difficult subject. They have their reasons to want to become independent, but it's not an easy thing. It's not going to happen overnight.
Why do you think the Basques, such a minority of this total country, why are they doing so well economically, where Spain as a whole has so much unemployment and poverty?
The Basque Country?
The Basques, yeah.
Yeah, the Basques and Catalonian, I mean, historically, they've been more industrialized than the South. But in terms of unemployment and recession, both autonomous regions have been hit by that. I mean, it's not that they're doing well. I mean, maybe they're doing better than the South, but in terms of the recession, I would say the whole country has been impacted. But to answer your question, I would say it's part of something to do with their industrial aspects along the history. Mm-hmm. Are you ready for the flamenco?
Well, have you?
It went by itself.
Oh, I don't know how to maximize this. You know?
He's coming.
From current slide.
He's coming.
Yeah, please. Perfect. And I wanted to play something from. Okay, very briefly. I don't know if. Do we have time? Do we have like five minutes?
Sure.
Sure.
Very quickly, I wanted to tell you, this is about flamenco, but I could have done the same about other cultural products, for example, architecture, food, or whatever. Spain is what we call a melting pot. And the United States is the American melting pot, but up to a certain degree, because you are a younger country, I would call it still a tossed salad. And it's melting. I mean, the tossed salad, the ingredients are melting, but you need centuries of history to do the actual melt. And I think the best example of the Spanish melting pot would be flamenco. And I know that you're familiar with flamenco. Flamenco, there were some pictures of a dancer there and the typical flamenco band clapping, the percussion and the dancers. And when we say flamenco, what's the origin of flamenco? I'm sure that a lot of people would say gypsies in India. And that's part of it is true. I'm not going to deny that. But if that were the case, flamenco would have originated in Hungary, in Romania, in Italy, in France. They were there before they came to Spain. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here to show is that the gypsies came to Spain in the 15th century, 1492. They actually entered through Catalonia, and they had left India in the 6th century. So they encountered a melting pot of what we call folklore music that was actually the product of the different peoples that colonized Spain, that settled in Spain. And flamenco is full of different influences. For example, the Greeks were in Spain, in the south of Spain, and they came in the 6th century before Christ, and you know what they left? The castanets. They left the bullfighting as well, by the way, but the castanets. Then came the Romans. The Romans, they left the forerunner of the guitar. You know, in the flamenco pieces, you have the forerunner of the guitar. Then came the Jews. The Jews came in the 6th century, and they say that they left the intricate guitar playing and also the wailing tone of some flamenco types. Then came the Arabs. The Arabs actually came with the clapping, with the percussion, okay? What we call jaleo, which is all the percussion, even all the ole, you know, ole, that term that comes from Allah. It comes from an Arabic, a Muslim term, okay? So when the gypsies came to Spain, they actually, in the 15th century, they met a melting pot. The music was part of that melting pot of different influences. And for centuries, the gypsies kept it alive. And flamenco actually came out to the public and became an industry, if you want to call it like that, in the 19th century with the café cantantes. They were like cabarets, you know. And nowadays it's another industry, the same as bullfighting or soccer, that handles a lot of millions of euros, okay? So flamenco is a landmark, it's a cultural icon in Spain, but it's the product of the different peoples that were in Spain and that fusion with the gypsy music. And very quickly I'm gonna play, if you go to the playlist and you go to number 9, just very briefly, that's the Jewish influence in flamenco. This is a flamenco song, and the rhythm, the wailing tone, is very similar to Sephardic music, but it's flamenco. If we go to that one, that's very gypsy. And it's the forerunner of the guitar. That's what I said, the Roman influence. Those are soleares. It's the wailing tone. That's gypsy. And then the next one, if you've been to Sevilla, my hometown, this is like the most popular type of flamenco. If you want to meet people in festivals in Spain, you have to learn how to dance. Especially men, there are very few men who know how to dance, so they're always dancing with women all the time. And the last one, and this is fusion, this is what they call new flamenco. It's flamenco mixed with pop, reggae, with rock. And you know, like old people, purists, they say that's not flamenco, but I'm a new Spaniard. This is the flamenco that I like, not the other three. So anyway, thank you very much for coming to my presentation. I hope that I've awakened your interest in going to Spain and also in learning Spanish, obviously in the Florida Keys Community College. I mean, they offer very good Spanish classes here. Thank you.